and think about this. So there are 1.6 million people in Calgary. We got 35,000 seat stadium, 10 games a year, 350,000 to sell out every single game. So we need, less than 25% of Calgarians to come to one game. That's it, one game, and we've sold out our entire stadium for the entire year. And I'll say this, I guarantee they're going to come and enjoy it because our team works incredibly hard to give you a reason to come to a stadium built in 1960 that has its challenges. So we're going to make sure when you come, you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be more than just a game. It's going to be an event. So Calgarians, come to one game in 2025.
This is Shed Talk.
You know what? I remember when the CFL, the Calgary Stampeders, would win every single time. But guess what? The last couple of years, they haven't been doing so good. So we had to ask ourselves a better question. Why? Why do they do what they do? So what I did, I asked our next guest, Jay McNeil, the president of the Calgary Stampeders, what are they going to do next year? Oh yeah, and by the way, we have Grey Cup in Calgary, and wait till he starts to tell you what's happening at Stampede. Shh, only on Shed Talk. Jay McNeil. Oh my gosh, this is an honor having you on Shed Talk right now. This is great.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm like, what a great spot to be having this.
Isn't it awesome? You get to stand in the shed. We could have a cigar. We can basically have some drinks. I don't drink or anything like that. Yep. But anyway, we could sit here and do anything in the shed at Shed Talk.
Right? Who doesn't love the shed?
No doubt. So here we are.
Yep.
I'm honored to have you, the president of one of the greatest football teams of all time. Everyone's going, I wonder who that is. Yeah.
Right? I love it.
And here it is, the Calgary Stampeders.
Yes.
Yeah, they might have had a couple odd years here.
The last couple of years were a little bit rough. Not what we're used to, but we've got a legacy of winning, and that's what we're getting back to.
So when you talk about a legacy of winning,
yep.
Okay, and that's nice. We all love to win. But being a professional athlete, being a professional organization, okay, and you know how hard fans are, okay? Yep. How does that feel to be the president of a losing organization?
Temporarily losing. Yeah. It's hard. This is a team that I love. I was fortunate enough to play for them for a long time, and it's spent my entire professional football career with the Stampeders, and I just I love everything that we do as an organization. So to have a rough couple of years where we were last year we were 5-12-1, not good enough. And our fans expect us to win. And as an organization, we expect to win. So it's been challenging, but it's going to make it that much better when we get to where we want to be.
And it's interesting because everybody wants to win. Okay, yep. Here you go. You got teams. There's a winner and there's a loser. Somebody has to be at the bottom. Somebody has to be at the top. And Calgary's been at the top. Oh my gosh, I'm going back how many years they played Edmonton and forever. And in Labor Days, I'd have bets with guys that Calgary and Edmonton, and Calgary was always on top on Labor Day, and right down to, I think it's last 30, 40 years are dominate. Yep. So they have the last couple of years are bad. But when you look, somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. But as an organization, like, you guys have to take that so personally inside.
Yes. It doesn't matter whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, your training staff, equipment manager, or on our business side of things. It hurts, when you're not winning. And like I said, these last couple of years have been tough, but we've got a group that, on the business side and on the football side that are committed to getting back to winning, and we're excited about where we're going.
So when you're talking about exciting where you're going, is it one person, one part, or is it a whole team of parts?
No, it's a team. Football, the ultimate team game. Yeah. And I know lots of sports would say the same thing, but football really is the ultimate team game. And you think about it, one person doesn't do their job, the quarterback can't throw the ball. The star running back can't run the ball. So you need everybody doing their job. And it's the same on the business side of things. And so it really is an organization mandate, to do everything we can to get back to where we want to go. We've taken, a great step in training for Vernon Adams Jr. We're excited about that and bringing him to town. But we've got a long way to go. We've got more work to do.
So you've got a Stamps organization, okay? Yep. You got a whole team underneath you. What's your role? I know you're president.
Yeah.
But what do you do as president?
Well, part of it is, creating a vision that everybody buys into, that everybody understands and wants where we want to go. Not only about where we want to go, but how we're going to get there. and what is it going to take? I love talking about, what does it take to be a champion? And that price, everybody wants to win, like you said, but there's a price to pay to be a winner and to be a champion. And are you willing to pay that price? And so to try to inspire, our team, our organization, to pay the price to be a champion.
So what is that price?
Well, hard work, perseverance, teamwork, leadership, passion. It takes all of those 5 things. And you dedicate yourself to those 5 things, I guarantee you're going to win a championship.
And everybody that comes on board, so picking from picking your players, from picking your organization, to picking the people that work with you, they have to be passionate and love every aspect of football.
Yep.
Because there's no way you're going to have somebody that's working for, I don't know, selling widgets over here, but didn't want to get into the football. You got to love and breathe this stuff.
It's hard, right? It's a very, I would think all professional sports are hard, and you can't have one foot in and one foot out. You got to have both feet in. You got to be committed to it, and be passionate about it. And if not, you're not going to last long. That's for sure.
So as being president and where you came from before, because you were a player.
Yep.
And what was that transition from player to administration or to the next level?
Yeah. Well, it was, part of it, I worked in the energy sector for the last 20 years. So from the time I retired, I guess not, I haven't been retired for 20 years, but close, until I came back to the team 2 years ago. And so, got exposed obviously to the business through football. I was vice president of the Players Association 8 years after I retired from the game. But then got exposed to, to the business world and what does it take to be a champion and same 5 things, right? Hard work, perseverance, teamwork, leadership, passion. Same 5 things, help you to be a champion in the business world. And so then how do you bring them together? And I've been so fortunate to be back in this position now.
And it's interesting when you're just talking about that because you were in the oil and gas industry. And I'm going to speak from a little bit of experience sharing here in professional sports. Mm-hmm. And what I've really recognized and noticed, and you can talk in high school level, you can talk at any sporting level that has a team aspect, and as a business aspect, you want to build a team. Mm-hmm. So as a business owner, you want to have the greatest team around. But when you find that you have individuals that work in a team aspect, especially professionals, like it'd be college or obviously professional, these guys that are coming on your team, because they usually become sales reps, and they're team orientated, they become the greatest sales reps, greatest people ever, best contact, best individuals possible. Now, here's my question about this.
Okay.
Is what we find is here are these kids that are professional athletes, okay, going through high school, that are they're the number 1 players, okay? They've been drafted.
Yep.
They all of a sudden they go to college, they're the number 1 guys. Then all of a sudden they move from college. Now they're going into, they play with the Colts, and I'm using that as well, because then all of a sudden still the number 1 guys, the girls like them, and they're all that. Now they're in professional football. What do you recommend? Here's these guys, because once they're done, what happens? Like, can you tell me a story about that?
Well, I can, a personal story is so towards the end of my career, I recognized, and I think, as an older CFL player, I had mentors that had taught me, you got to start preparing for life after football, right? You don't know when it's going to end. Number 1, it could end tomorrow, or if you're lucky enough, you could play another 10 years. But at some point, you're going to have to transition into the business world. And so the sooner you plan for that, the better off you are. So I was working the last 6 years of my career. And so when the day I retired, I went into work the next day. I was working in oil and gas, and it was an easy transition from that perspective. But being a part of the team and be a part of an organization for so long, and then all of a sudden the next day you're done. It's not that you're old news, but you're not required anymore. And that's hard to get over because I was fortunate enough to have been with the Stamps for 14 years. I was a captain when I won the President's Ring. And so I had a big role with the team, and then I didn't the next day. And that was actually pretty hard to take. And, going through it, it was tough. I look back on it now, it's easy to say. I struggled mentally with that because you don't feel part of the team anymore. All your teammates that you had played with and who are now retired, they've got jobs, they've got families, they're trying to survive on their own. So you don't see them as much. You don't feel a part of that. And I was, at the time I would have said, hey, I'm great. I've got a great job. I've got good friends. This is awesome. But I look back on it and I really struggled with it mentally. And I was one of the fortunate ones. I had a good job. I had a stable family. I had all those things. And then, there's other guys that, don't necessarily plan. And then they're trying to find jobs. And it becomes even more challenging, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So I was very fortunate, although it was calculated, but I was very fortunate. And even then I struggled with it. So I know a lot of guys do.
So when you go back, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the alumni. So when you talk about CFL, and then you go back, and then how much that the players need that support of the union, okay, and how that comes into place. Because I think a lot of people don't realize that while you're playing football, that is your most marketable time. Market yourself at, look at that, even the time's exactly what I'm talking. When guys are playing football, they actually need to market themselves while they're playing at the same time, because they're the most valuable at that particular moment. Yep. So, because they can get into any interview, any place to have an interview to say, hey, when I'm done this, here's my next goal, versus all of a sudden the season's over. Then all of a sudden they go for an interview. Oh, I'll put you on my calendar.
Yep.
So what's the biggest asset that you found? So back in the day, was the union around when you were playing?
Yes.
The players union. And has it changed a lot from then to now?
It has, yes. Like, it had played a significant role, within the CFL when I was playing. They did a good job of talking to you about what's next. Think about that transition. At the time, I don't think there was any programs in place to help us with that transition before you retired. But I know when I was on the executive, those are one of the biggest things we focused on, is how do we get our players to focus on what's coming next? Right. Because it comes sooner than you think it does. 14 years, and it went by like that for me. And I was one of the ones that got to play, a fairly long time, and not everybody is that fortunate. So, how do we get players, like you said, while they're the most marketable, while they are, people know who they are, and they can get that interview and start planning for that transition. And so the Players Association has a number of programs to help players now, and I think it's come a long way, and I know they're working to make it even better.
Yeah, and it's great to see that, because we've had people on the podcast talk about players that would basically ended their career short because of where they were at, and then all of a sudden that shock, going, whoa, this is incredible.
Yep.
So like, here I am, and now I'm hero. Now I'm down to here as a zero, whatever that would be to whatever's in their emotional headspace.
Of course.
What do you recommend with these players if you were to say to them at any given time that transition part? What would be the one thing you'd tell these players to do?
I think a couple things. Number one is networking, right? I mean, especially in Calgary. Calgary is such a special place because it's built around networks. And so, the more charity appearances you can do to meet people. And while you're there, be active. Be active meeting people, try to follow up with a coffee, try to follow up, to meet them for lunch, or those sorts of things as you meet people, and build that network out. And then two, be very intentional about potentially working in the off season. I didn't really want to work in the off seasons, but I did, right? When you're training, and because you're trying to make a team, you're not sure, you want to devote everything you can to training. But the sooner you can start building your resume and help with that transition, those two things: build that network and start working as soon as you can.
Oh, no, that's awesome. Now let's get back into the Calgary Stampeders for the next season.
Yes.
How do you feel about the next season besides you're going to win?
Yeah. You know what? I'm actually so excited. I wish it was, we were getting into May and the season was getting started. But like I said, we traded for Vernon Adams as a quarterback. We're excited about, the energy he's going to bring. We're going to be active, during free agency. And so obviously that's not going to happen until February, but we're going to be very active. Something we've shied away from in years past. We felt to build the team organically and build up through. So the next man up mentality, but this year we're going to be more active and replenish our team through free agency. And then we're excited about the draft because we've got the number 1 overall pick. So really excited about where we're going from a football perspective. We've got a bunch of new coaches to bring some new energy. So we feel that like I said, we've got some work to do, but we're on our path to having success next year on the field. And then off the field, we announced that we're going to be hosting the 2026 Grey Cup. So we're about to go out with our season ticket campaign in early January that will incorporate the 2026 Grey Cup. So we're excited about the excitement that can bring, for our season ticket holders and for any new season ticket holders. And the schedule isn't out yet, but we're going to, for the first time ever, we're going to do a game during Stampede. We've always shied away and gone on the road for the 2 weeks during Stampede. And this year we're going to do a game on July 3rd. The Sneak a Peek night, and we're going to make this, a big event. So we're really excited about that as well, to make it sort of a tentpole game, to make an impression, and to do something really special. So on the business side, we're really excited about the steps we're taking as well.
So it's interesting. So you're going to have it at Stampede. So there's going to probably be a big, huge tent. There's going to be bands. This thing's going to be over the top.
We're going to capitalize on what Stampede has become, right? When you think about, that's what our Grey Cup, part of our Grey Cup bid was, Stampede has become a music festival, and Calgary's becoming known as a music city. And so let's take advantage of that. We're going to have concerts every night during the Grey Cup festival. And we're like, well, let's kick it off during Stampede this year on July 3rd. And let's have a concert. Let's have bands playing. Let's make it excitement and bring people together. We're going to partner with the Calgary Stampede, and they are excited and want to partner with us. So it's going to be a very cool event.
Oh man, you guys can be able to basically do just about anything and truly knock this out of the park.
So excited.
So excited. So your days right now, so here we are, you're in the off season.
Yep.
What are your days like?
Yeah. It's funny. People, I get asked that question all the time. They're like, oh, you must have a couple months where you can kind of relax a little bit. And it is not that way at all. Season ends, we go straight into budgeting for next year. And with the budgeting, you build your plan. We don't have the schedule yet. We're still working that with the CFL, but kind of having a bit of an understanding of what you want to do. What you want? How are we going to bring new fans into McMahon Stadium in 2025? And so you start planning that through the budget process. And so we're just wrapping that up, and then in the new year, it's going to be building those plans out further with our business side of the teams, and then getting ready for the free agency and the draft. So it's exciting.
So number one pick,
yes.
And do you know who it is?
No.
Our
player personnel guys don't tell me. They keep me out of the dark on that one.
They're going to say, no, we're not going to tell you yet.
It's part of the magic of the CFL draft is to understand, who's going to get drafted in the NFL, and are they going to will they come back to the CFL ever? Maybe not. And then would you ever call it risk a first overall pick on somebody that may never come back to the CFL? Or do you, take a chance, okay, they're never coming back, but we'll pick this guy because we know he'll come to us next year and make an impact.
Okay, so you know what? Let's deep dive that a little bit. So because you're saying not come back, meaning go back, what do you mean by not come back?
So the draft is strictly for Canadian players.
Okay.
So and I'll give you an example. Curtis Rourke, who is the brother of Nathan Rourke in BC, he's the quarterback at Indiana. They're playing in the college playoffs. There's a high likelihood that he will go in the NFL draft and get an opportunity to play in the NFL. And so could be a potentially a huge impact player for an organization, but will he ever play in the CFL? And so would you take that risk that you want to, I would say no, you wouldn't. You'd go with somebody who is going to be coming to the CFL and playing.
So here's a question. Let's deep dive that a little bit better, because you just said, well, you think they know. So here I am as a fan. I'm looking, well, here's a Canadian. Here's a guy. Do you actually go to them and say, hey, would you be interested if we took you as a first round to come to Canada to play back at home, say maybe lives here? Would you ask that question to them or no?
Like you could potentially. The CFL draft is after the NFL draft, so you get a pretty good idea of what's going to happen, from the results of the NFL draft. So you got I think most teams would have a pretty good idea of the players' intentions. If they're drafted, they're going to try the NFL.
Okay, so it's interesting, because that's an interesting play for yourselves, that everybody has to say, okay, now we got to deal with this, and then we got to deal with that, and basically build this organization around that. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask another question, because you're talking about budgets. So you're putting the budget. We got to get everything ready, because here's our budget. Here we're going to be playing across TV, TSN being sold. Is that going to affect anything with the CFL? And I'm not saying they're sold yet. Does that play any anything to the CFL or just the organization as a whole?
Well, the TSN is a big partner to the CFL, which ultimately, cascades down to all the franchises. So it does have an impact. Our media rights deal with TSN ends at the end of 2026, and so it's there. I mean, there could be an impact, but in the short term, while there's a contract, then no, it wouldn't.
Yeah. And did you guys ever look at that? Does the CFL look at that, saying, okay, this is where this is going to come into play? Because there's something that could happen that could be sold, that it's kind of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, might have happened. Do you have to damage control? You have to play for the narrative that what happens if that does happen?
Yeah, I think you're always, as any good business, you're planning for all the contingencies. And so, what if? And how do you react from there? And you try to build plans around there, and then until it actually happens, you're kind of sitting and waiting.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you get to watch that whole transpire out as where CFL was having its issue years and years ago, and then it's come back and revitalizing and doing a great job in its marketing, great job in growing, and the product is way better. Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about the product? Besides, you're losing right now, but that's okay. You're allowed to lose a couple of seasons.
No, that's behind us now.
That's exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
We're allowed to lose then, but now, because like you said, the product right now is outstanding, and going into Grey Cup and having Grey Cup in Calgary with the Calgary Stampeders in Grey Cup that year is going to be outstanding as well.
Yes.
Right?
It'll be a very special time for the city.
It will be a special time for sure.
We're actually, very proud of the product, for the Canadian Football League as a whole. When you look, we track as a league a number of different metrics, and we compare ourselves to the NFL. And in every single one of them, we score higher. So people who like data, right? There's a lot of people that love data, and you look at all of the different metrics from, first downs on offense, sacks given up on offense, sacks by a defense. How long does it take to play a game? Like all sorts of different metrics, and we look at them individually, and then we roll them up into a game quality index, and we are above the NFL on every single one of them. That's something we're really proud of, and as our commissioner would say, fun, fast, and entertaining. Right? That's the CFL, and it truly is. And when you look at the data supports it, it's last year in 2024, over 60%, almost 65% of every CFL game was decided in the last 3 minutes. Like, how many NFL games could you say that? I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's not even close, right? And so it's exciting, and there's a reason to watch it till the end.
And it's kind of one of you mentioned that they're in the last seconds, and if you're a Saskatchewan Roughrider fan, and they
Which
all
I'm not,
know,
by the way.
no, and neither am I, but I get to hear the stories about, Saskatchewan, they always lose it in the last minute after the last 10 years. And it's kind of like, it's that ongoing, here we go, they're going to have it in the last year. Well, we know what's going to happen. So, and that's what the beauty about it is. And when you look at the CFL and Saskatchewan Roughriders, Saskatchewan, and especially when they play here in Calgary.
Yeah. No, it is their fan base. You love them and hate them at the same time, because you wish, ours were that dedicated and that, it does. I've been in Mexico, southern Mexico, been on a beach and seen a boat, drive by, and it's got a Rough Rider flag flying over top of it, right? Like, there is something special with Rider Nation, and we get to experience that every time Saskatchewan's here in town, right? It's half the stadium's green. So,
yeah, and it solely makes it just a wonderful product, wonderful sport, and watching everybody play that camaraderie. Now, the stadium.
Yes.
Having a stadium that old, that's been around, that iconic, and then with the university there and what's happening, do you see any transitions in the stadium?
Yeah, well, iconic. I appreciate you saying that. It's I try to change the narrative a little bit. There's a lot of negativity towards McMahon Stadium. I talk about it being, we have the Fenway Park of the CFL. So there's something special there. There's been a lot of history. You think of some of the great players that have come through that, like, quarterbacks alone, Doug Flutie, Jeff Garcia, Davis Dickus was a player, Henry Burris, Bo Levi Mitchell. Like, that's just in the last 30 years, and you could go back on and on about the players that have come and played there. And when you're sitting in your seat there on a hot summer night, there's no better place to watch a football game than McMahon Stadium. We've got some challenges, sort of on the concourse. But we're doing the best we can to invest where we can to try to make it a better experience for our fans. But it is a building built in 1960, and it's got its challenges. So, we are trying to have conversations, with everybody who will listen about, the benefits of what a new stadium would bring, to our not to our organization, but to our community, because there's just so much that can be done with it. And we're going to replace the turf in 2025, 7 to 10 year lifespan. I would like to say that we would never have to replace the turf again, because we're moving into a new facility. So now that's just me saying that. There's nothing that is based on, but that's the goal too.
And the owner groups, do you think they would push towards that?
Well, I think, they would love to talk about a new stadium as well. So it's, something we talk internally. Will it happen? I hope it does.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you look at that whole layout, that whole infrastructure around the university district, like that whole area, and what it brings, and the vibrant, and the C train, like everything around there is just kind of like it's ready for its next transpiring into the future.
Right.
That next build out.
Yeah. You can't beat the location. Like it is just a great place. It's easy to get to. There's lots of parking for lots of tailgating. There's lots of space there. We are ready for, the next version of McMahon Stadium.
So being the president, what is your greatest challenge?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's no secret that the CFL and the Calgary Stampeders in particular, have an aging demographic when it comes to fandom, and it's really connecting with new audiences. Calgary's demographics are changing as we speak every day. When you think we're the fastest growing city in North America, and many of the people coming to Calgary are new Canadians and never been exposed to football before. And so how do we expand our fan base, so that all Calgarians understand, number one, understand the game, and then number two, understand, what the Calgary Stampeders mean to this community. We're going into our 80th season next year. And so for almost 8 decades, we've been bringing Calgarians together. And so, we want to continue that tradition and be the place where Calgarians come to celebrate. And so that's our biggest hurdle that we have to get over. We're going to get over the Grey Cup hurdle, but teaching what the Calgary Stampeders means to the community. And you think about it from, what our players do in the community. And I'm just getting the stats from this year, but in 2023, our players participated in 422 community appearances. They did 570 community hours. We worked with 55 different charities, 24 amateur football programs, and visited 60 schools. Like, we're making Calgary a better city, and we want to continue to do that, but we need all Calgarians' support in order to be able to do that.
And that is so important. And with newcomers coming into Calgary, and when you look at the minor football leagues, like from the peewees to the bantams to the midgets, and watching them go through, because of a lot of the coaches, a lot of people that are involved with these organizations are ex-CFL players.
Yes.
Giving back and putting back to the community to grow these young kids, to actually grow that. It's a sport for, and I'm going to get into this. One of the things is versus hockey versus football. And from my experience sharing is that when you look at minor football, anybody can play football, because you can be at any size, shape, and athletic ability, and you get to learn as a team in football and what team atmosphere can be, versus like hockey. They've got leagues. You're in Division 1, 2, 3, 4. You're this. Not that it's good or bad. It's just different. But the camaraderie in football far outweighs that, and it's as cheap and inexpensive. When I say cheap, it's an inexpensive sport to have kids go in there and play and learn that discipline.
Yes.
And getting more kids involved in the communities to play community football to build on it.
You're right. Like, it is one of the cheaper sports you can play. Really, you need a pair of cleats, and then the equipment's usually provided by the schools or the community programs, and then there's not a whole lot of travel that goes with it. Right, you're playing within Calgary, and so there's an opportunity to do it relatively cheaply. And we talk about the things that it takes to be a champion. I mean, you don't have to play in the CFL to learn these things. You just need to play the game. And that's what I love about it. We're helping build community leaders by supporting amateur football. and all the things we do in the community to do that. Whether it's our alumni going and coaching, we're helping create flag football leagues with another organization. We've got one. We opened up the Stampeders Flag Football League in Northeast Calgary to connect with new Canadians, to teach them the game of football, and it's about exposing them to a great game, a game that teaches so much about life and how to be successful.
Well, that's amazing, because I didn't even have a clue that they actually have a flag football, that you guys are sponsoring them to do that, just to be able to get that out there to every person that's playing. Now, here you are, okay, and talking about your fan base and everybody do, and then we're going to talk. I want to just talk a little bit. So your fans,
yes,
okay, and fans can be mom, and I'm going to use as a professional athlete, and then, when parents are at football games or watching their kids play, and how emotional the parents can get.
Yeah.
What would you say that's the level in your in your courtyard? Because and I'm not talking fans, I'm going to actually go break it down as parents, the parents of a player that play for you. And then what are their parents like? What are the mom and dads like with the parents? Like, are they as crazy as some? And I use crazy in a tongue-in-cheek way, meaning, when you go to an amateur hockey game and then the parents get really loud and obnoxious because they're yelling at their kid, "Hey, you got to work harder." Do you see that in a professional aspect?
I don't see it sort of in that tongue-in-cheek way, but certainly I love when our players' families come and visit. We have a lot of American players, so they're, a lot of times they're up here alone, or maybe with their wives and children, but their parents are not necessarily here all the time. And so when they do come to visit, number one, you can see how proud they are of their child, right? Which you love. They're playing a professional game, in front of 30,000 people, and it's pretty exciting for them. And so to see that is pretty cool. I mean, they like to cheer, and they're passionate about the team, but also their child's success, right? So it's not in a negative way it's all very, very positive. And then as we go on the road, at every game we go to, there's always parents from our players, visiting, coming to visit, driving, flying in to see the game. And so we get to experience that wherever we go, which is pretty cool.
Now, what would you recommend or say to a young player who wants to play in the CFL?
Yep.
And yes, you got to be motivated, determined, you're passionate, and build it. What will make them step out and be recognized versus something different? Like, what would you give an advice to about them?
Well, and this goes back to something we talked a little bit about earlier. Number one is it's with anything, not even just football, but let's just as it relates to football, there's a difference between good and great, and are you willing to pay the price to be great? Right? If you want to be average, do what everybody else does. And if you want to differentiate yourself and be great, then work harder, train harder, and be a leader on the field. And then that will help take care of everything for you, right? Because you do those things and you're going to differentiate yourself and you're going to get noticed. You're going to move on to the next level because of how hard you're working on and off the field, and because of the leader that you are. And so you dedicate yourself to those things, and good things are going to happen.
And who is your greatest leader for you?
That's a really tough question.
And it can't be your dad.
No. That's fair.
Yeah.
I'll probably pick a number of them. Like Wally Buono was, he was the head coach and GM when I got drafted. So I got to, learn under him for, I think, 8 years of my career, which is pretty special. The winningest coach in CFL history. So that was a privilege, and you certainly taught me a lot. And I think of players that I played with, when I was young, Rocco Romano, Stu Laird, I'd liken him to be a big brother. And I joke around, but it's true. Like I remember, my rookie year, and I would, buy lunch wherever and bring it into practice right before practice. And I remember he would, lecture me on, don't be wasting your money, pack a lunch. And, be bringing your lunch in every day instead of going out and buying it and saving your money. And so how do you not love that? And then, he did that for everybody. And him, like I said, we're still friends today. I think of guys like I think of a receiver like Alan Pitts. Right? He was not a vocal leader in the locker room, but he worked his butt off every single day. And there was a reason why he was one of the best receivers ever to play in the CFL, because he came in and worked every day. So you saw that. You saw what does it take to be, one of the best players, and he lived that day in and day out. And I could go on and on because there's just so many examples of guys that I played with, coaches that I had that were just incredible leaders and really taught me, what does it mean to be a leader?
Interesting. I heard out of the grapevine, I just wanted to clarify this as well. You had a player that played with you, and a lot of people know him. It's probably trending. Dwayne Johnson?
Yes. Yeah.
Any stories or anything you'd like to share, or just this? Because I'd heard that and I went, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That'd be something, a little tidbit.
Yeah. So my second year, he was on our practice roster. And I would say this, like, he was just a really down-to-earth good guy. Like, I can remember sitting in the cold tubs, in the jetted cold tubs after practice, one right beside each other, and talking to him. His father and his uncle were into wrestling. As a kid, I loved wrestling, so we talked about that life, and he didn't give any indication that was where he wanted to go, but it was like. He was just a really good, soft-spoken, good guy. And so when he became this giant personality, you're like, whoa, that's awesome. So no, I have nothing but good things to say.
No, that is so great.
Yeah.
Great to hear it and hearing about that. Do you know what, Jay? This is our time. Is there one thing, just before we finish up, is there one thing that you would want to say, have, do, hear, anything? Is there one thing you want to get out?
Yeah. This is all around the Stampeders. We talked about, the impact we have in the community and how we need Calgarians to support. And I break it down this way and think about this. So there are 1.6 million people in Calgary. We got 35,000 seat stadium, 10 games a year, 350,000 to sell out every single game. So we need, less than 25% of Calgarians to come to one game. That's it, one game, and we've sold out our entire stadium for the entire year. And I'll say this, I guarantee they're going to come and enjoy it because our team works incredibly hard to give you a reason to come to a stadium built in 1960 that has its challenges. So we're going to make sure when you come, you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be more than just a game. It's going to be an event. So Calgarians, come to one game in 2025.
And we always hit the Labor Day games. We always have, Grey Cup coming up, and what's going to happen with that product out there with the Calgary Stampeders. Thank you very much for coming on. Jay, this has been an honor.
Yeah, thank you.
And you know what? Guys, buy tickets for the next game. And if you don't, well, guess what? We'll actually throw some tickets in. Thanks.
Oh, I love it.
And we'll do that.
Yes,
Thanks.
absolutely.
And thanks for coming on Shed Talk.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Now you know. Shed Talk.